Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for this talk, Naqsh Collective Unlived Moments, which is part of an exhibition of the same name that was on view at Gazelli Art House in London earlier this month. My name is Aimee Dawson, and I'm an art and culture writer, as well as the deputy digital editor at the Art newspaper. And today I will be talking, as you can see, I'm joined by the artists Nisreen and Nermeen Abudail, who together make up the Amman-based design studio Naqsh Collective. And we are also joined by the curator Venetia Porter. So in this talk, we will find out more about these wonderful artists, their inspiration and their process, along with expert context about Middle Eastern art and museum collections from Venetia. Then at the end, there will be time for questions. So please do use the question and answer function in Zoom. Send through anything that you may have to ask to Venetia or to the artists, and we'll get to that at the end. So first things first, we have some introductions. So many of you, I imagine, will know a lot about the artists already, but a bit of background. So the collective's name, Naqsh, is the Arabic word for engrave. And this name was inspired by the fact that engraving is the oldest way that humanity has left its mark or told a story. And it's from this point that the two sisters aim to create a universal code with their works that everyone can relate to. So the collective was founded in 2009, bringing Nisreen's expertise as an architect and Nermeen's experience as a graphic designer together to create these unique artworks. And they've regularly exhibited their work at Taraz, Amman, the Widad Kawar House for Arab Dress, which we will speak about in more detail in the talk. And of course, they've exhibited in lots of places internationally, including the Jordan National Gallery for Art, the Jameel Art Centre in Dubai, the Sharjah Art Museum, and the V&A in London. And they were nominated for the Jameel Prize at the V&A as well. And then we're also joined by Venetia, who is, of course, a senior curator at the British Museum for the collections of Islamic and contemporary Middle Eastern art, and an honorary research fellow as well at the Untold Institute in London. She studied Arabic and Islamic art, which so did I, but she studied at Oxford and I studied at Exeter. And her PhD is from the University of Durham and focuses on the history and architecture of medieval Yemen. She was the lead curator for the Abul Khairi Foundation Gallery of the Islamic World in 2018. And her exhibitions at the British Museum include Word into Art, Hajj Journey to the Heart of Islam, and most recently, and again, we'll talk about this more, Reflections, Contemporary Art of the Middle East and North Africa. So thank you to everyone who's joined us. This talk is also being recorded, so it will be an excellent reference for the future, I hope, into insights into these artists. So let's start, Nisreen and Nermeen, by talking about your latest exhibition at Gazelli Art House. It's titled Unlived Moments, and I wondered if maybe you could explain your choice of title.
Hi, ladies. Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here tonight. I would like to thank Gazelli Art House for this wonderful opportunity. I'd like to thank Venetia Porter for her valuable time in being here with us. Thank you, Aimee, for your effort putting all this together. Nermeen and I are really very grateful and happy to share with you our latest work at Gazelli last month, that it's titled Unlived Moment. Unlived Moment for us is one collection that talks about our childhood memories, the stories that were told by my father, the refugee, and about Palestine, about his childhood memory. My father used to love fishing. He used to take us to his fishing trips at the banks of Jordan River. And Jordan River, as we all know, is like a river that divides Jordan and Palestine, or connects, I would like to say, connects Jordan and Palestine. And when we used to sit on its bank, Palestine for us was so near, yet elusive. It was forbidden, and it's still forbidden, to cross the border on the other side as refugees, as Palestinian refugees. And like when we started dealing with embroidery as artists and as visual artists, we link these stories with the embroidery elements and visuals, and we try to translate the stories in our minds through this alphabet of design, and having the latest, or what's available in our hands as an architect and graphic designer, the tools and the technology. We wanted to document these moments and not only continue on embroidering more and more embroidery pieces, but to engrave it and to emphasize, to just make it an everlasting effect on stone and metal. For us, the material that we used in this collection, which is stone, marble, brass, metal, it was part of the determination that these stories, we want truly to document it, the unlived moments of Jaffa trips, Jaffa boat trips, the oranges fields that we never had the chance to visit, or to enjoy the oranges festivals in Jaffa, the unlived moments of the guys jumping from Akka Acre Wall. They're all Palestinian original moments that if we just got the chance to be there, we would be living these moments. So it's just going back through my father memory and my grandparents, and just having them all the time sharing these lines with us. We felt that we really want to just take their memory, not only our memory, and put it on on something very, very durable to stay, and just another documentation. Just mimicking, or taking the same spirit of embroidery and just having it on more everlasting material.
That's beautiful. Thank you. For me, we had a chat before about how I was lucky enough to visit Palestine when I was doing my year abroad, when I was studying Arabic. And I spent a few weeks there, and it's really striking to me that you were saying that you yourself have spent less time there than me, as a person who is, of Palestinian heritage. And that's crazy. And that encapsulates what you're saying about these unlived moments.
Yes, Aimee. 3 years ago, I had the chance to exhibit in Jerusalem, in Al Ma'mal, with Jack Persikian, a friend of ours who still has having a great gallery space in Jerusalem, Old Jerusalem. And we were lucky to exhibit a couple of pieces there. And I submitted for a visa, for a tourism visa, to just go and visit the exhibition. My visa was denied for no any reason to be specific, and then I lost the opportunity to attend the exhibition. And then after a couple of months, another exhibition in Khalil al-Sakakini took place in Ramallah, and I applied again for visiting Palestine for the same purpose. And after 6 months, I got a 3 days approval to enter Palestine, and that was it. It is, and it's still not easy for Palestinians living outside Palestine, and for Palestinians living inside Palestine, just to move freely from and to Palestine, not to mention Gaza and the extreme situation of siege that they're having. It's just like freedom of movement is not there. It's not even their right to start fighting for. They have other issues like water, electricity, basic life needs to start asking for then freedom of movement. But like again, we're very, very close to Palestine. Dawson is like literally like a couple of hours ago. And you can see that in our story at Wamashat. We will come to it in our talk, and we'll talk about the struggle of this lady crossing borders from Amman to Gaza. But like, again, we always dream of going back and forth just as easy as the road should be to Palestine. And we hope one day that this dream will come true. Just being in Amman and having the opportunity to enjoy the Mediterranean Sea in Jaffa and Akka and Nasra, like having a couple of 2 hours drive, and boom, you're there for the weekend to spend it on the sea, at the sea, and come back. We hope this moments will happen in our lifetime, or at least in our kids' lifetime, to enjoy it.
Absolutely. And one of the things is that you constantly find in work by Palestinian artists, but also artists from the Palestinian diaspora, is even though you may not be able to be in Palestine, Palestine feels very much embedded within you. And that expressing that is so central to producing work. It's so emotive as well as political. And I wanted to ask you, Venetia, as a curator and as someone who's responsible for acquisitions at the British Museum, why do you think it's important to collect political art? And what can a museum do to contribute to these kinds of conversations that are very live, happening, changing constantly, and is very much, a contemporary issue that we're facing?
Well, thank you for Aimee for the question, and it's really such a pleasure to be here and talking about this very, very important work that the Naqsh Collective does. Well, I think it's very important to have work that is political. I mean, everything is political depending on the where you look at it, and so at the British Museum we've been collecting a lot of works by Palestinian artists, of course, others. What fascinates me is the way these artists, whether they are living still in the area of their birth, the country of their birth, or whether they are in diaspora, is the way they tell their stories, and it can be incredibly subtle and interesting and very powerful. And the exhibition that you kindly mentioned, Reflections, which closed a few weeks ago, had the second room of it was called Tangled Histories, and in that section we had, if you like, the kind of major issues around the Middle East and North Africa, Iraq War, Iranian Revolution, Syrian War, issues around migration, and a very strong section by artists from talking about issues around Israel, Palestine. And what was actually really fascinating about it was that while it was on, of course, we had the most recent conflagration of the attack on Gaza, the demonstrations in Jerusalem and so on. And it was very interesting the way people coming in, immediately picked up on that. And I think why it's important is that, these artists are not journalists, and they don't pretend to be, but what they do is they make you look at these issues and topics in a particular way, and especially when we're all kind of fed up with reading about these things. It's so painful that who actually talks very much about this, Syrian revolution now. When you look at the art, from there, or by these Palestinian artists, actually it brings it really home to you. These works are very, very poignant indeed.
And I wondered, the British Museum, for example, it's a state institution. Is it problematic to collect works that perhaps have a political message?
No, I mean we're a museum of history, and history is continuing, and that's how I see this collection. I've been lucky enough to be working on building it, and I just see it as a kind of continuation of what of collecting, works from the past. So it's not problematic at all. What I think is important to do when one displays it and talks about it is that the voice of the artist needs to be there as much as possible. You can try and present it, but that voice, why an artist actually made something, what is the story that they're trying to tell, has to come out loud and clear.
And how do you go about, like you say, there's so many tangled histories within the region. How do you go about choosing the kinds of things to collect?
Well, it's very difficult. There's so much amazing art out there. I mean, fortunately, we only collect work on paper, so actually that narrows down the field a bit. But I just see things, and I get a sense that that's something that should be in the collection, or it'll go with other things, or expand a particular story.
That's really interesting. I didn't know that you only collected works on paper. How intriguing. We'll talk about this more. I wanted to ask Nisreen and Nermeen, there's so much heritage and history and meaning embedded into these motifs from Palestinian embroidery. Let's talk about kind of some of that symbolism and meaning, because to a person who doesn't know much about the region or know much about these histories, it's just very, very beautiful. It's incredibly, aesthetic. But they actually have so many stories to tell. So we have some lovely images that we can look through here. Can you tell us a little bit about some of these symbols and what they mean and how you've used them in your work?
Well, from a young age, women, the Palestinian women, used to embroider and learn how to embroider their own dresses and decorate them with their traditional cross-stitch patterns, of course, influenced by the cultural diversity of the historic Silk Road and the spice routes. And they would be the motifs would be derived from the flora and fauna in the region of Palestine and the cities and the villages. But over time, Palestinian women were inspired to create their own motifs and develop a visual vocabulary of their own, as the decorative became increasingly defined by the distinct geographic origins of the ladies and the makers of that embroidery. They also began to add other personalized touches of their own to tell the life stories and to talk about their status, their social standing, and their marital status, the number of kids they had. If she's a widow, it would reflect on her dress. She would embroider a dress with just blue, and it will be black and blue. If she remarries, she would add red to that. And through our research, Nisreen and I came to understanding that embroidery was an actual expression of these ladies about a lot of things they wanted to express. And being us now enabled in the social media, we feel enabled to do so. The social media was actually the dresses. It was their kind of reflective mirror to how they lived. And through that research, Nisreen and I felt like as a graphic designer myself and dealing with the motifs, it was not easy to tackle this art and add to it, yet feeling empowered as the right and legitimate heirs enabled us to interact with this media and to actually deconstruct these motifs as in graphics and redesign it one time, adding my graphical deconstruction to it one time, and Nisreen's architectural lines another time. All of that is quite personalizing the effect that we wanted to create and to give a signature as embroiderers in this day and age. So it left as a natural evolvement to these patterns, which we are thankful for in expressing our rite of passage for us using these motifs to express ourselves and stories.
I really love that idea of, today women perhaps use social media to express themselves. And, this is like an archaic version. It's a much more beautiful version than social media, that's for sure. But can you tell me a little bit about interacting with these traditional embroiderers? Because you've done that. You've done a lot of research, through texts and archives and things like that, but also it's a living tradition. So you're still communicating with the women who are making these clothes even today. So what has it been like having that dialogue, and also what do they think of the way that you're interpreting their craft?
So for us, when we wanted to do embroidery, we wanted to when we studied actually embroidery, we studied it on pliable material and textile. When we saw a lot of live pieces at Widat Qawar's Home for Arab Dress, a lot of these were in a condition that fragile, I may say, like they would. By time, they would lose the details of the stitch. So that's the natural embroidery technique that we would relate to. But then Nisreen and I, when we wanted to do embroidery, we didn't go to the traditional form and to the ladies embroidering as in the thread and the textile. We actually felt the need to engrave it and to preserve it on material that lasts, on everlasting solid stone and metals, whereby we're taking the technique from the cross stitch of the usual thread to a different form of expression with the graphical language and architectural lines through our, if I may call it a movement in embroidery art expression.
That's so nice. Have you found that people have tried to join your movement in any way? Have you seen other people kind of inspired by this, turning embroidery into different materials?
I leave this answer to Nisreen, because in Jordan, she's quite encountered with a lot of young age enthusiasts who wants to take this heritage and this inheritance forward. Because we always say, what if embroidery didn't really go through such stress and times in Palestine as an art? Where would it have reached by now? Like if it kept on evolving, and it was not just a resistance form, because at one point ladies and kept on embroidering till now the traditional dresses on as a form of resistance. At one point they were not allowed to carry on any flags in the streets for demonstrations, the Palestinian flags. So they actually embroidered the Palestinian flag on their dresses and wore them and went out in the streets. So that's like the direction of embroidery took a turn to a resistance rather than nourishing an evolvement of the actual art itself. So we always ask this question, where it would have reached if it took another time. So yeah, Nisreen.
Well, going back to your question, Aimee, about the new direction that Nermeen and I just took embroidery to like the graphic word and the architectural lines. And when we started this, as Nermeen said, like this kind of like a movement or a way of like dealing with embroidery. It was not easy. We were like very conscious. Nermeen and I were very conscious when we just talked about let's do embroidery in a different way. So we're like, Nermeen, this is embroidery. This is for everybody. We'd rather be very careful dealing with this element because people would just hate us if we ruin things. Because this is for them as well. It's not for us only. It's a responsibility. It's a collective heritage. You'd rather do it in the best form ever or just leave it as beautiful as it is. So it is just being very careful, touching the motifs and just knowing the taking the forms as is. And then we felt we're really more comfortable of just touching this, moving this, adding to this motif, knowing the story originally from its original source, going back to research and references. Again, as Nermeen said, tiraz were like without Qawar's addition and treasure. It was a great source of information to us. We felt that we are empowered and we are ready to deal with embroidery in a different way and form. And it was an easy transition that we took embroidery from its own comfortable word to our really new word. And like in our first exhibition happened in Tiraz, we were shocked by people's reaction. Actually, in fact, when we started this collection, we didn't know that Naqsh will continue on forever dealing and working with embroidery. It was one collection that we are inspired with, but like seeing people's reaction and seeing people's loneliness that they really want to see embroidery in another form, they really want to celebrate this form of heritage and culture, and they really wanted to engage, and they engaged. They asked us like as if we are like masters of embroidery, and we're still just learning about it. But like it happened that we came with my knowledge in material, in architectural material, and the very humble knowledge in architectural material, putting materials together, techniques together, and having embroidery element as a third or like a new element to our palette. And like Eureka, it's like having a new discovery, or like a new, it's just literally it's having a new word that we tapped in. And then we decided that, okay, it is, it's a knowledge. It's a sea of knowledge that we want to dig deep in it, to know more about our culture, our roots, our grandparents' stories, our land, and to connect with people and to just collect more stories from people connecting with Naqsh. And the journey started from there. We decided that we're gonna focus on embroidery, study embroidery in depth, and try to seek all references available. And again, going back to Tiraz, every day I go to Tiraz, I go in depth with the collection of Auntie Wadad, and every time, even going back to the same dress, every time I discover a new detail that adds to us in a very satisfying way, I have to say.
It sounds like such a rich like bounty of inspiration that you have to work from. And I wanted to talk a little bit about some of these collections, because as you say, they are very fragile, a lot of these. They were meant to be lived in, worn, taken out on the streets, and they're living pieces of art. And so lots of them that survive and are now trying to be preserved are in a fragile condition. And there are some places that are working to keep these in the best condition for future generations. And we'll talk a bit about Wadad Kawar's space in Amman that we've been touching upon since. But first of all, I wondered, Venetia, if you could tell us about the British Museum's collection, because they have an important collection of Palestinian costume as well.
Yes, we do actually, and it was put together. It began to be put together in the mid-60s. There's a major authority in the field. Actually, we saw one of her books there. This is Sheila Weir, who, as a very young curator, when she came to the British Museum in 1965, her first job was that she was asked to select Palestinian costumes from what was then the Church Missionary Society. And so after that, she then went on field work to Israel and the occupied territories and Gaza. And this carried on for several years. And she built up an absolutely extraordinary collection, which was then added to subsequently. And she published a lot. I mean, she's a real authority on the subject. And in 1989, she did an incredible exhibition on this. But what's been happening in recent years, actually, which is very nice, is that this collection is now looked after by my colleague Zaina Klinkop, and so with her, this one wonderful person has entered our lives, who's called Omar Joseph Nasser Khouri, who is a scholar and from Birzeit, and he's been really studying all the designs, and he's been coming in regularly to the British Museum and really kind of filling the gaps in terms of knowledge about particular styles of embroidery and all of that. Wonderful sideline of his, of course, is he makes kind of wonderful costume, or anti-fashion as he calls it. But we also have the opportunity to put it into our new gallery, the Al-Bukhari Gallery. So we've got a few pieces at the moment, but then in a few months' time we'll have more out, because we rotate the collection. So I think the collection is about 1,000 pieces. Altogether, costume and fabrics and so on. And Sheila and Widad Kawar actually worked together a lot, and you could say that they are the two sort of big authorities in this field. So British Museum is very fortunate in having this resource, and of course you talked about the fragility of these textiles, and so the big advantage of them being in, whether it's Widad Kawar's museum or in the British Museum or elsewhere, is that then they get conserved and looked after and so on, and preserved, for the future.
And to, apparently inspire the next generation.
Exactly. We have many students who come and actually look at the collections, textile historians, and that's it. Once these objects are in the museum, they can be studied and are a very important resource for the future.
And it's great that these kinds of collections exist in different places, and of course in one of the biggest museums in London. That's amazing. But the Widad Kawar collection, let's talk about it in Amman. You, Nisreen and Nermeen, you've exhibited a lot there. Obviously, it's kind of like a second home for you guys. Like, you spend so much time looking at the pieces and being inspired by them. Maybe you can just kind of talk a little bit about that collection and how it's influenced your work, and how you continue to respond to it.
Before Nisreen goes, I'm sure Nisreen has a lot to say about Auntie Widad and Widad Kawar's home for Arab dress. I say that I envy her every time she goes there, because she goes into an encyclopedia of Auntie Widad's brain, and she just enjoys the beautiful dresses. I encourage every person visiting Jordan to go there, enjoy the collection, see the beauty it holds. It holds more than 4,000 artifacts from the region, from around the Middle East as well, and enjoy the warmth and the richness Auntie Widad holds within her knowledge of the pieces. But yes, Nisreen, because I'm in Dubai, I reside in Dubai, she's in Jordan, that's why she gets to visit more often.
No sibling rivalry or jealousy here.
Yes, I'm going to talk about Tiraz to make you all from London, Dubai, come next summer and visit this amazing place. I don't only go to enjoy the place. I go anytime. I just knock the door of Auntie Widad and just enter to spend hours with her, talking and just sensing her passion and love to Palestine, to culture, to art, to humanity in general. Auntie Widad, and with her passion, she collected thousands of dresses, not only Palestinians, but like from all over the Arab world. She's generous. She's very generous that every time she's willing to take me to her storage, not only the collection that she donated to Tiraz, where Tiraz is a small house that she created next to her own private residence where she lives in Jabal Amman, and she dedicated this space to exhibit beautiful, unique pieces of thobes that goes back to hundreds of years ago, and each one is she did an amazing work of like documenting her dresses, her collection, and like several books. And these books were our first material that we found in our hands to just get introduced to embroidery, Palestinian embroidery. In fact, Nermeen and I, we never had the chance to own an old Palestinian dress. My grandmother was not, she was very busy in her daily life, that she had a very simple Palestinian dress. And from my mother's side, we lived around our aunties, witnessing them, their everyday embroidery experiences in a modern way. But yet, going back to Widad Qawar's collection, with her team, Auntie Widad, with her team, they are doing a great job documenting not only the dresses, the stories, the geographical areas that each dress, they try to continuously dig the information, the correct information, to just place it in its correct place with the thobes. And by connecting the pieces with their original stories and documenting them in their huge archives, I always tell people from all over, whenever you're in Amman, you have to come and visit Tiraz. When we started our collection in 2015, everybody just told us that you have to go and introduce your work to Widad Qawar. She would love to see what you're doing. And literally, I visited her one day for the first time, and she was sick. She had me visit her in her bedroom. And like I started sharing the pieces literally while she was in her bed. And that was like, for me, very touching. She was that determined, that passionate, that even when she's feeling sick, she still wants to hear about more Palestinian stories and passion. And when I asked her that we'd like her honor to come and have the honor of like the opening of the exhibition, she immediately asked me that I want you to come to Tiraz to have the soft opening of Tiraz, with the collection being displayed, with your pieces being displayed around the thobes. And for us, it was literally a dream, just curating our pieces around these wonderful thobes. And this is where we started our journey with Tiraz. And since then, whenever we have an exhibition in Amman, it has to be in Tiraz.
And then that is exactly why it's like a second home.
It is.
I wanted to take this opportunity to remind people who've joined us, if they have any questions, please do send them through. We'll get to them in about 20 minutes or so. But Venetia, I wanted to ask you, because you also, I have been to Oman and I have not been. So now I'm feeling like I'm definitely missing out. But you have been, haven't you, Venetia? Tell me about your experience, and tell me about why, these kinds of heritage centres or archives are so important for this kind of material.
Well, I have been to Amman, but unfortunately, the day that I was there, the museum was closed. But actually, we were having dinner with Widad. It was a most wonderful, very, very special evening, and so we went round the house where she has a lot of these costumes as well, which are kind of in process of making their way to the museum, as it were. And so it was very, very special privilege to look at these beautiful garments with her, and her knowledge is so prodigious. I mean, just incredible. And the whole thing that I think is so exciting about this material is that the embroidery differs from village to village, and so you have to, once you learn that vocabulary, it's there with you, and she has that and communicates it wonderfully. As we've been hearing, I mean, these collections are very, very important, and especially they mean so much in terms of what it is to be a Palestinian. I think these collections, they are living traditions, and the fact that actually they are also continuing to be done with, for example, the organization of Naqsh, which I think it's based in Lebanon and in Jordan. I think, I'm not sure, but where they continue to encourage women to make the embroideries, actually to earn money to support themselves. And the fact that it isn't something which is this kind of min zaman thing in the past. This is living tradition, and it's all about who people are, and also they're beautiful as well. So I think that's what's important about a collection actually in the region is that it's Palestinians are everywhere, and these works can be collected, and there are collections, and then also most importantly you can meet the women who are actually making the embroideries today, so that you learn how to do it. So there's a richness there that's extraordinary.
Absolutely. And the more that I've listened to you guys talking about this, I see it almost like a process of, what is captured in this thobe, in any kind of material, because it's not just dresses, of course, embroidered. It's capturing a history, it's capturing a story, like you say, it's capturing a village or a geography. And those are the kind of intangible heritage that is being captured in this embroidery. And then you guys are, like you say, solidifying this further into an object that's even more lasting, and just captures it in a different way. So it's almost like it goes from something very invisible, such an important invisible history and story, and now it's in solid marble and stone, and that's it's a really interesting process, and an important one too. Let's talk in detail a little bit about the works that you produced for your show at Gazelli. And you can, there's some beautiful, I love seeing this, again, this is part of the process of taking something from the fabric embroidery, turning it into something digital that can then be put into a physical solid object. But so this is an installation view from the exhibition. I thought that perhaps we could talk first about one of the central pieces in the Unlived Moments exhibition, which is the Wamashat work, which depicts a Gazan lady wearing her Palestinian thobe dress, which you can see here on the left. Could you tell me a little bit about this work?
Wamashat Mashhad for us was a very, very important piece to shed the light on Gaza Strip. For doing this political piece of art, we wanted the inspiration to encourage us to constantly reframe our values and reconsider what we hold to be right or wrong, and true or false. So we really wanted to shed the light on the agony and what is actually going on in Gaza, and to do what we can to remedy, not us as just Palestinians, but we want to speak to the world about it. If you allow me here, I would like to quote from Visualizing Palestine poster regarding Gazan children. If a 14 years old childhood in Gaza, he would have was born in 2007, okay? He would have lived 4 years of war old, like 4 years duration of war time. But his lifelong conditions would have water crisis, where 97% of fresh water contaminated, and its lack of access to clean drinking water, which leads to a lot of illnesses and mortality. Deep poverty, where 64% the poverty rate, 69% food insecurity, 35% of Palestinian children under 5 at risk of not reaching their development potential due to chronic trauma. Right to education, there's like 2/3 of schools in Gaza operate double shift. Mental health, 88% of Gaza children practicing in one study had experienced personal trauma. This 14 years old child would have been born in 2007, born as a refugee, and in a blockade where the year he was born, Israel would impose a blockage on Gaza ongoing as of 2021 by land, air, and sea, intensifying earlier restrictions. And in December 2008 till January 2009, First War, this lucky child would have survived a 22-day attack in Gaza. Israeli forces killed 1,385 Palestinians, including 318 children. In November 2012, Second War, he would have survived an 8-day attack as Israeli forces killed 168 Palestinians in Gaza, including 33 children. And July 2014, Third War, being lucky again, he would survive 50 days of onslaught as Israeli forces killed 2,251 Palestinians in Gaza, including 556 children. And 1,500 of these would be orphaned. And ongoing of March 2018 till December 2019, Great Return March for 2 years, community turnout en masse to protest the blockage. But in May 2021, Fourth War, then he would survive an 11-day attack as Israeli forces kills 230 Palestinians, 12 of 67 children. And I would go on with the traumas and the chronic traumas of acute and name it of really, there's a blind eye turned to Gaza where we would really, really want through our art to shed this light. Yet we're not shedding the light on blood or like the visual effect that we're showing is celebrating our culture, but we do want the message to be delivered through the patterns, through the heritage, through the culture that was created, and we want to pass it on.
I think that's so important. And one of the things, when you're looking at such beautiful objects like you guys create, it's so much more than that. There's a very serious message beneath the work that you do. And I think actually that this series at Gazelli, is probably expresses that more than anything that you've done. Would you agree? It's very narrative, in depicting that. I didn't know if you want to talk about any of the other works in the show. And I wanted to check, is there a, so here's a full-on view of that work that you were just talking about. Did you want to discuss more of these? So beautiful to see these close-up details. If anyone gets a chance to go and see these works in real life, they're absolutely breathtaking, and they move as you're moving around them because of all of the indentations and reliefs of the works, and also the metallic elements. They really, as you're moving around them, they really do come alive. Maybe you can talk about this, the Yafa work. We mentioned it in the introduction.
Yeah, actually, Aimee, can I go back and talk a little about Wamashat, please?
Yeah, of course.
Wamashat piece for us has a special place, not only because of embroidery patterns and Palestinian details, but just Nermeen and I embodies this lady from time to time through our journey at Naqsh. This journey is quite peaceful, joyful, and full of determination and pride. We see ourselves walking in this journey, crossing borders, breaking through all boundaries to connect with the world, and with the importance of your role, the galleries that allow artists to speak and to tell their messages and to connect with the world through their artwork, and the importance of museums like the British museums, like the V&A, like all free museums that they believe in solving world problems through art. This is our, not only, I don't want to say like our only tool of resistance, but it's one of the most important tools that humanity nowadays should really take turn and focus on the role of art, design, and beautiful media to talk about solution, talk about peace, talk about connectivity. And for us, again, this piece talks about the woman role, the Palestinian strength, the Palestinian strength in a woman, and it's in her resistance and her existence on a daily basis in Gaza, and through the struggle that she takes every day to just keep this life going with her kids, with her family, and in her surroundings. The strength that this lady holds, and just Nermeen and I, we feel that we are grateful coming from this background to experience life, and we're grateful to this element of expression, embroidery, and this element of the beauty that is held between its details, that it's a language by itself, that we are really communicating with the words with it. So this piece has a lot to talk. The story of it, it's Wamashat means, and it's walking, and then she's walking, and she's gonna keep walking to reach to her goal. She's walking in a field, and she's coming from Gaza to Amman, then to the world, and her trip shouldn't take more than a couple of hours with like a happy and nice journey. But like, ironically enough, this journey is impossible to the situation that's currently happening in Gaza, which is so sad. And this is like our daily suffocating feeling that we're very close to Gaza, yet we feel that we're helpless without our art form and art resistance. Like, for us, it's freeing to just be able to speak about Gaza through you as an art platform in London, and through museums like the British Museums, the V&A, and other museums out there. Again, as like participating to this work. Thank you, guys.
It's really lovely to hear you talking about it, and also, you know, to look at this work now and see you, Nisreen and Nermeen, as this woman. You know, it's very powerful. I wanted to end talking about another work that's important. We've got a few questions, and I want to make sure we have time for them before we finish at 7:30. So we'll just lastly talk about a work we've discussed, which is Unit and Diaspora, which I think is, you know, it speaks a lot to, you know, your lived experience. I encourage everyone to go and have a look at these works that are just kind of flicking through the screen now. You can obviously find them online at Gazelli's website, and of course at Naqsh's website too. This one really captured my imagination, the carpet. So this is a really exceptional, beautiful, you know, on location work. And it's basically, you know, 180 sundials that you guys have created that represent the diaspora of Palestine in the world. Can you tell us a little bit more about this piece?
Okay. All right. I'll go ahead. So this installation talked about the numbers of Palestinian diasporic population in the 1948, putting the numbers in retrospect to the different locations that they were living in at that particular moment, which depicted us not only doing one sundial, we ended up doing 180 different sundials, each sundial's genome bearing a unique pattern, of course rooted in the Palestinian heritage because of the pattern it held. And that genome casted the shadow on the sundial to tell the time. Why a sundial in particular? Because each Palestinian in diaspora relates to time, or has the timekeeping habit of how many years counted in being away from the homeland. So these pieces that were shown outside the city of Amman, 20 minutes away, as the installation itself, it gave like the drive to that location, was the first part of the interactive experience crafted around the exhibition that meant to parallel the diaspora. And the scattered feel of these different groups or grouped sundials gave the different locations where the Palestinian population immigrated to. As you walk through the field, you would encounter a sundial here and there, similar to the Palestinians around the world. And each, of course, genome held a different angle. That angle reflects the location of the person on Earth, of that Palestinian diasporic person. So this was overlooking the Palestinian, the area overlooks the mountains of Jerusalem in Palestine, to feeling quite near yet very far from where you are as well. Like the genome reflecting a Palestinian in heart, where he held the pattern so dear to him. Like when you enter any home, any Palestinian home around the world, you definitely will see, I assure you 100%, a piece holding embroidery, cross-stitch embroidery somewhere, be it a cushion, an artwork, a handkerchief, anything. It will, Palestinians do keep this as a symbol of their own DNA with them.
I think this piece is just absolutely beautiful, and it's so incredible that you are able to connect, even as, you know, part of the diaspora who can't return, to be able to make this connection across to Palestine is a beautiful gesture. Thank you so much, everyone, for this talk. It's been lovely to hear about your process and to learn more about the works and to learn more about Palestinian heritage and material pieces as well. And now we know where we can go and find them wherever we are in the world. We have a few questions. I'm going to stop sharing the screen so that I can see them. So thank you everyone for sending in questions. The first one for Venetia, an anonymous attendee has asked, do you think that craft is used more or less in the work by the artists in the region recently? And do you think that museums acknowledge craft more than they used to? Which I think is a great question. What do you think, Venetia?
I think that's such an interesting question, that actually the line between craft and art is very, very fluid. And I think that people have become more interested in the craft and the patterns and so on, but it's the way they take it further that is so fascinating. So if you think of, there's a wonderful exhibition on at the V&A at the moment, which is a collection of contemporary ceramics. And you see by Middle Eastern artists, and you see these really interesting ways in which there is tradition, but also there's innovation and so on. And so I think it's quite blurred, this line now between craft and art. What do you think, Aimee? Do you think so too?
Yeah, so we talked about this between a little bit when we were preparing for this, and I think that from my experience at the art newspaper, perhaps there's too much division. We're trying, and this is true of all of art history, I think, where everyone tries to kind of neatly package everything. So like, this is from this decade or this era, or let's label this one thing, or this is and I think that that's one of the things that's changing about, you know, the art world, is breaking away all of those really limited boundaries. And I think that craft, you know, it is treated like a dirty word, but I think it is changing a lot. And I definitely think that it's not just in the Middle East, you know, every country, every culture, every region has its, you know, traditional craft history, you know, because craft really is about making things that you use and sometimes making them beautiful in certain ways that are beautiful to different people, but it comes from a place of use. And really, craft is kind of another word for design, but design sounds a bit fancier.
Exactly.
And there's a lot of mixing between, and I think a lot of the most interesting works really are the ones that cross lots of lines and isn't easy to define.
I think there's something also quite interesting about how there seem to be many more artists now who using the resources of, you know, provided by, whether it's the designs of Palestinian costume or you think about artists who are inspired by woodwork in Saudi Arabia, you know, the Mangur screens and that sort of thing, and who are using these as a kind of resource, or, you know, aspects of illumination, and then they're taking it further, as we're seeing with the Naqsh Collective, so that they're not static in a way. It's like a kind of big pool of vocabulary, which you can kind of, if you're an artist, you kind of dip in and out of it, and I think that's what's so interesting.
I think so too. And one of the things is that as time, you know, moves on, we're using more and more digital, more and more like machine made. And so this idea of returning to something kind of a bit more like historic, wholesome, a bit more connected to humans and society and community is something that, you know, it's partly nostalgia, but it's also partly just trying to make a real human connection. Don't know if you guys, Naqsh, want to say how you feel about that, the craft.
In fact, I always feel like this is a very interesting relation between like art, craft, and design. And I've been hearing this. The food art, for example, like we've been really hearing a lot of like food art, just like food, like culinary art was like basically for having a good meal, but like now we are like enjoying not only the taste, just enjoying looking at the plate and just enjoying the colors, the textures in front of us. It's like it's a craft, yet it's turning into an art. And exactly that, like how fashion it started, fashion started as a craft, and then people started to add their taste and their like artistic touch. And we just happen to have like a fashion line. It's just away from being like only having a piece of clothes just covering your body with, and like having this advantage of the luxury of production and technology and the fast production and the options of putting variables together and to create something new. It's just another way of like another form of art that allows creative people just to keep on experimenting, and just eureka, all of a sudden you have a new object, a new field of art that you're experiencing, which is very interesting.
I agree. I've got another question. So, to Collective, could you tell us more about how you work with solid materials and why did you choose them as your main medium?
When we worked with embroidery, we started to understand more about our roots. And this was something quite important for us as second generation, like living in the diaspora. And us not knowing as much as my grandmother used to know, because we are not wearing the embroidery as they used to wear it every day, that made us a little bit, as the second generation, I wouldn't say shift a little bit, but again, shift a little bit from the heritage, the culture, yet we're so immersed into it and we're so into it, but it's not there in our everyday life. So we wanted something to be around this, resonate the story. For example, showing our kids what embroidery is about, telling the stories of a pattern called Khaymt al-Basha, or Tariq Masr, the road to Damascus, road to Egypt. We wanted this to stay around us. Since we can't wear it as well, we want the story to dwell. We want to then hang it. We want to see it. We want it to live around us, and we want the next generation to be exposed to it on a daily basis. And we want that to last and last and ever last. And when we saw the patterns or the fabric decay, or like be stressed, or like some patterns would be vanished, we said this is something we have to keep and we have to preserve. So engraving and on solid material was one of the means. Yet the beauty of stone and the beauty of material, the wood, sometimes Nisreen keeps saying this when we work on for example, the walnut wood. She says, this is like a bar of chocolate. I feel like I want to eat it. So sometimes the material itself speak to you as the beauty of it comes out. So engraving was another form of art on such pieces, not keeping it only to pliable material of textile and thread.
I love the idea of it being like a bar of chocolate, but I often feel like that when I look at the works. I'm like, God, they're so tactile, and you do want to touch them. You want to feel the wood and the marble and all of that. And in a way, I mean, not that I have gone up and felt all of your works, but there is a way.
You can.
Well, maybe I will. There's, in the way that you can't do that with these kind of old textiles anymore. Your pieces, they can be kind of experienced in that way, which is quite nice. I think we've got time probably for one more question. And I'm actually gonna flip this because it is a question to Naqsh, but I'm gonna ask you, Venetia. So the question is, do you think that the work needs translation, or can people respond to it all over the world without that context? What do you think, Venetia, as a person that's obviously not from Palestine and doesn't necessarily know all of these kind of like secret languages we were kind of discussing?
I think that's a really interesting question. I mean, you could ask that question of all art that one sees in museums, but in this particular context, I think you don't need to know what it means, but I think it adds a whole nother dimension to it when you do. And because they're beautiful objects in themselves, as you say, you long to kind of touch them, but actually when you know the roots of the designs and you hear the story, I think it makes it actually compelling, just takes you in a different direction, makes you think more about these textiles as a resource and their history and so on. I mean, I had a question actually, if I may, to Nisreen and Nermeen, which was actually
sure.
When you make these particular pieces, like the woman walking with the designs at the bottom, do the designs pertain to the place? So that work is about Gaza. So do the designs that you brought together there, do they relate to Gaza, or how is it? Do you bring together all these different elements and then it becomes a purely decorative thread that you're creating, or how does that work?
Okay, I'm gonna start real quick with this question because part of it was like in our discussion when Nermeen and I started adding patterns or adding graphics to this piece, the field of where this lady is walking, it's supposed to be a wheat field, like where there's a very specific pattern in the Palestinian embroidery, and it's called the golden wheat. So we use this to indicate the field that she's walking in. And then the Gazan thobe is very significant, and it has its own glamorous, and it has its own beauty, like rich in details and rich in embroidery motifs. So yeah, in this particular piece, it is filled with Gazan motifs. To just again talk about following the steps of our grandmothers, of like, if we're talking about Gaza, just let's have more of Gaza in it. But again, there's pieces of Yafa and pieces of Akka, where the youngsters jumping off the cliff. This experience is not exclusive to youngsters from Akka. They come from all Palestine to experience this. So you can see in this artwork a lot of graphics from all over Palestine, that they're coming to this location to experience this experience. So whenever we talk about one piece, Naqsh. It has its own story in selecting and picking the motifs used in it. And through our digital library, we have now like hundreds of patterns that's already documented and digitally archived on our computers that we go to it. And sometimes if we feel that we need more or we need something that it's not there yet, we go either to the books or we go originally to the dresses and pick more motifs from the dresses.
Interesting. Thank you.
Well, thank you, guys. I think that's kind of us towards the end of our talk now. I wanted to, just thank you all. It's been a really fascinating discussion. I want to say go and see Naqsh's website. Go to Gazelli Art House online and you can see more information about the artists and the work and the exhibition that we've been talking about. And thank you, Venetia, for joining us. And you now all know where you can go and find Palestinian dress if you're interested in going back and seeing this heritage. So thank you very much. And hope to see you all again soon.